Long before Rome, before the Parthenon, before the world had yet settled into the shit stain it would become, there was Greece, and in Greece there was Solon. He was a poet, a philosopher, a man who gave Athens its laws and then chose exile rather than see them unraveled by the restless hands of those he sought to save. He wandered, first to Egypt, where the priests whispered the secrets of time, then to Lydia, to the city of Sardis, where gold ran like water. And there, atop his mountain of wealth, sat Croesus, one of the wealthiest kings of his day, wrapped in silk, drowning in luxury, convinced that fortune was his faithful lover. But fortune, as Solon knew, is a fickle thing. It lifts men up only to throw them into the abyss.
Croesus, king of Lydia, sat atop a mountain of gold, but gold is heavy, and the gods have a way of making sure men drown in it.
When word reached Croesus that Solon had arrived in Sardis, he summoned him to court at once. Solon, the wisest man alive, had seen the world and knew its secrets. And Croesus, king of Lydia, wealthiest of men, expected Solon to confirm what everyone already knew, that Croesus was, beyond question, the happiest man to have ever lived.
Solon phasi hotis ophotatos I anthropon, epemode pantas tous anthropus hus heorakas, entais planeis tuis isoisin, tina eis eudaimones kaleis.
Aneronomati Tellus Athenios.
Croesus, confused, asked him why this Tellus was the happiest man to have ever lived. And Solon replied, because he lived a good life and had a good death. When Croesus asked why that made him happier than himself, Solon answered that Croesus was still alive and that no man could be called happy until his life was finished. For fortune was fickle, and no one could know whether a man had truly been blessed until the gods had taken him beyond the reach of fate. Croesus, believing Solon to be less wise than his reputation suggested, then asked him who the next happiest were. Solon answered that it was two young men, Cleobis and Biton, who had died in the prime of their youth. They were strong and virtuous, and when their mother, a priestess of Hera, needed to be taken to the goddess's festival, they yoked themselves to the cart and pulled her there, since no oxen were available. When they arrived, the people marveled at their devotion, and their mother, in gratitude, prayed to Hera to grant them the greatest blessing a mortal could receive. That night, after feasting, they lay down in the temple and never woke again. At this, Croesus grew impatient. "And what of me?" he asked. "Am I not the richest king on earth? Have I not achieved more than these men?" But Solon only shook his head. "I can say no such thing," he replied, "for I can only call a man happy when his life is over, and we have seen how it ends." After hearing that he was not even the second happiest man, Croesus, frustrated, sent Solon away, considering him a fool rather than a wise man. He could not understand Solon's perspective, that true happiness could only be judged after death, once fortune could no longer change a man's fate.
In the years that followed, Croesus grew in wealth and power, but his triumphs were overshadowed by a prophecy that his son, Attis, would die by a spear. Determined to defy fate, Croesus removed all weapons from Attis's presence and barred him from military service.
But when a giant boar began terrorizing the region of Mysia, Croesus, at the request of local rulers, agreed to send hunters to slay the beast. Attis, eager to prove himself despite his father's caution, pleaded to join the hunt, arguing that a boar wielded no spear. Believing this to be a loophole in the prophecy, Croesus reluctantly consented. However, in the chaos of the hunt, one of the men mistakenly threw his spear, striking Attis instead of the boar, killing him instantly. Overcome with grief, Croesus sought to bury his sorrow in conquest, believing that expanding his empire could fill the void left by his son's death. His thoughts turned to the growing power of the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, whose forces threatened to encroach upon Lydia's borders.
Seeking divine guidance, he travelled to the Oracle of Delphi, presenting lavish offerings of gold and silver, and asked whether he should invade Persia. The oracle's cryptic reply was, "If you attack the Persians, you will destroy a great empire." Convinced that this meant victory, he assembled his armies and marched eastward. Yet the empire that fell was not the one he expected. In the decisive Battle of Timbra, Croesus' forces were utterly defeated by the Persians. Retreating to Sardis, he believed Cyrus would not pursue him until the following spring, as winter made prolonged military campaigns difficult. Cyrus, however, seizing the opportunity, advanced, catching the Lydians off guard, defeating them again, and besieging the city of Sardis.
Sardis fell after a brief siege, and Croesus, once the wealthiest and most powerful kings in the world, was taken captive and condemned to die on a burning pyre. As the flames rose, he finally grasped the full weight of Solon's warning. For wealth and power are but passing shadows, and the man who is free and happy today may not be tomorrow. Overcome with despair, he cried out, "Solon! Solon! Solon!" Cyrus, hearing his cries, asked for an explanation from his advisor, who told him that this Solon was a man who once told him a great piece of wisdom which he had thought foolish, and that only now, as he was about to be burned alive, did he realize the truth of those words: to call no man happy until he is dead.